page. So what page are you talking about?
Search?
No, but search of what page?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
In this algorithm, what's your question?
Google search is a factor in this.
Yes, so your web click-throughs from Google to Google Play from web search. So when someone goes on Google and they search, you know, card battle game, and they click through from Google to Google Play, that's taken into account in that formula.
So you're saying the search...
And separately, your SEO, where you're placed in the Google search, if that's your question, is also factored into.
So the web, the page of the app in the Google Play Store on the web, it's search ranking. Is that what you're talking about?
No, not your ranking on Google Play. This is how you factor the ranking. This is the algorithm in the Google Play Store.
And I'm asking about the SEO and the Google search factors.
Yes.
So I don't understand what those are.
I think if I get the question right, I think I get what you're saying. It's like if I have a Google Play app, that Google Play Store link, it's where that store link ranks for a specific search, right?
Yes. Yes, that's correct.
Well, what's the search? So is it the app name or like what? You know, so we have two different apps. They're both competing in the rankings, and SEO is coming into it somehow. What is the search term that they're competing on?
I'm not sure what the search, but there's a number of keywords. It might be looking at those specific keywords, and that we'll get to the App Store optimization on keywords a little bit later. Yes.
What are the most important factors, and how is the percentage over here?
I don't know the percentage breakdown in this particular formula. I just know that I do know that the install rate minus the uninstall rate is probably the most important factor. I don't know the percentages of how that formula is weighted. But they really care about whether the app is uninstalled. Yes?
I was a little confused about the web click-through. If I've purchased advertising on somebody's website, and that ad has a link back to the store, does that count towards the web click-through?
Oh, well, I'm sorry. If it appears in Google search, it does.
Not that line.
Now, if it's click through to Google Play, yes. So they're tracking incoming to Google Play from other sites. So as you get hit on your Google Play page from other sites, you know, that's sending traffic to that Google Play, that's tracked. Yes.
So although it may not be monetarily efficient, I could just buy my way.
Exactly. So I mean, Google owns search, and they make money. They monetize off of the search. So it's in their interest for that to be a part of the formula as well. Okay. I'll move on. So this is when you buy. Let's say you buy a bunch of users through W3I, which is now NativeX. I haven't updated the slide. So you buy a bunch of users, and then over time you start to fall. And that effect lasts about 4 days. You know, obviously it's because we know the formula. You know, there's 4 days on a weighted system. And that's the heaviest part of that. But that, from the time that you start to purchase to the time that you begin to fall, just purely from organic perspective, after you've purchased from users, you stop buying them, what's that distance before you start to fall? It's about 4 days. So these are different channels. You can use W3I, Tapjoy, free app of the day. A single channel, all of them promise that they'll get you to the top 10. Spend tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that's what will get you to the top 10. Very rarely, if at all, can a single channel get you to the top 10. They can generally get you to about the top 25. The amount of volume needed to get to the top now is pretty significant. So you can typically get to the top 25 fairly easy. So how do you get to the top 10? If you use a single distribution channel, let's say you use Tapjoy, you spend again, you spend again. This is spending the same dollar amount. Let's say it's $40,000. Each time you spend $40,000, there's diminishing returns because the volume that those individual channels have has been exhausted. They see what you've had, and you're paying for more of those users. Less of it is getting the organic effect. So how do you solve this? By stacking the channels. So at the same time, you spend on Tapjoy, W3I, Taptica, a number of different channels, and that bursts you up to the top. As opposed, and it doesn't necessarily mean spending more money. You can spend the same amount, break it up across multiple channels, you're exhausting less of the volume of traffic on those individual channels, netting more of an organic effect from each of them, getting you higher in the story. Does that make sense to everybody? This is how you stay at the top, because if you notice before, spending on a single channel the same amount, you keep falling down. What you do here is you flip between, so once you've gotten to the top, you do a burst campaign. Now how do you sustain and stay at the top? And that's by flipping the different channels that you're spending on. So you spend on Tapjoy, and then you spend on W3I, and then you spend on Taptica, you spend on all these different channels, but you're flipping through them, so that way by the time you come back to Tapjoy, the entire volume of traffic has not been exhausted, and it seems fresh and new in their minds. They haven't seen your app in a month or 2 months or whatever. Yeah?
So you said that you have to spend at least on one channel, like at least 2 channels in order to get into that top 5.
I didn't say how many yet. I'll come to that.
So my question, I guess my more direct question is...
But yeah, you'd have to spend at least on a couple of channels to get to the top 10. You can spend on one channel and easily get to the top 25 if you spend enough.
But to stay in the top 5, then you basically have to be spending on 2 or 3 channels simultaneously and rotating.
Yeah, so there are probably 100 plus different channels you can spend on. I started to create a slide listing all the different channels, and it was exhausting. And I hadn't even tapped into it. There's probably 150 plus different channels that you can use to buy traffic. Now with that said, the ones that have a large enough volume to really tap into them, maybe there's 50.
Okay.
But you might be spending on a couple of them this week, a couple of them that week. But what you're doing is you're flipping through the different channels that you're spending on over the course of time. So by the time you come back to the original channel, the users have forgotten about that.
And it's still
kind
organic.
of fresh in their minds, organic again. So in the early days of the App Store, you could spend on a single channel, get to the top 10. Early last year and before that, you could spend on about 3 channels. Now it's 30 plus channels, and my recommendation is about 38 channels. So what this means is that it's a beast of a job to manage user acquisition properly. You really need to dedicate a lot of resources to that, really study these. If you want to minimize the amount of money that you're spending to get to the top on your marketing and really maximize the effect, you've got to apply this methodology where you're spending on multiple channels, really study those algorithms, because this is insane to manage. But if you can do it, you can beat out your competition and spend significantly less and get much more impact for it. Ian?
Do you know of anybody providing that as a service?
Yes, but to my knowledge, they're not coming anywhere near this number, and so you are spending a little bit more. Now you're spending less than if you were just to buy through individual channels. TradeMob is the only one that I know of off the top of my head. I think there's a couple of others I've seen online. Do you know of any?
Fix it.
Do they manage all the different spends for you and ensure that, because, okay, Fixie might be another one. I'm familiar with Fixie, I'm just not familiar with that particular service that they offer. So this is TradeMob, I mentioned it. This is just some of their charts showing, reiterating what I talked about. So these are the users that they bought, and then after they stop spending, they get an organic effect that eventually starts to fall down over the course of about, I think they have it 4 days at a time. And the really cool thing, I just added this image here because they show that you get a lot more organic traffic from games than typical apps. And they currently calculate it takes about 80,000 installs to get to the top 10. Now that really fluctuates heavily during the time of year, the number of competing apps at that time, a number of different factors. If you're going in at Christmas, you're going to have probably 200, I'm guessing 200,000 installs to get to the top 10. I don't know, it's insane.
In what time period? Sorry.
I think that's within a day. It might be 4 days. I'm not sure. I'll double check. But there's the link. You can read all about it if you want to write that down. I'll leave it up for a second. Actually, I'll come back to this slide at the end and let you write down that link. So the thresholds where you get this organic boost is cracking into the top 5, 25, 50, 100. And actually, those numbers are a little bit different now because the way the App Store's display is different, but it used to show from top to bottom, and it would show you the top 5 apps. And you would have to hit load more to see the top 10, hit load more to see the top 25, and now you scroll from right to left, and I think it displays 4 at a time. So those thresholds are actually broken into factors of 4. And as you cracked into each of those, you would see between 3 to 10x organic lift. And so in other words, if you bought 10 users, you could expect to get 30 to 300, or I'm sorry, 30 to 100 users organically. Yeah?
The ASIO guys say it's very different between Google Play and App Store. And it really does have to do with how many are being displayed on the screen. They all recommend go in incognito mode and search for your app and see how it comes up. And try to get a feel from that where your breakpoints are.
I think with Google you can even do it on the web. But anyway, it really depends on how many they're displaying as to what those thresholds are. The reason those thresholds exist is it used to be, when you would load up the App Store, you could see the top 5 without doing anything. And so the users didn't have to pursue further clicks to view more. And so now I think it's the top 4. But again, that's why those thresholds exist. So again, I was talking about like if you spent money on Tapjoy and W3I, but if you spent on the same channel, so let's say this is the amount of users you bought, you would see that huge effect. The next time you came back to the same channel, you'd have to spend more money to see the same amount of effect, and then an even higher amount of money to see the same amount of effect. So how do you change that? A new feature. So a new feature, a new icon, a new description, new keywords, new images, all of that in the search itself can affect, lifting you back up to the top again. So that, or I'm sorry, lowering you back down to the bottom in this sense. So you're only spending a smaller amount, and then you refresh that cycle again. Come out with a new feature and you refresh the cycle. Is it any questions on that? So what distribution channels work? There's web banners, reviews, online marketing. Does any of this work? Short answer, no. Long answer, no. Off-the-device marketing virtually has no effect whatsoever on your install rate. 148 Apps, one of the best review sites out there. You can be featured on 148 Apps and maybe net a few hundred installs from that. And if you notice, to get to the top 10, you need like 80,000. So how do you really impact that? Channels that are on device. In-app advertising, offer walls, cross promotions, anything on the device itself is going to translate to installs. Do you have a question?
What about really not review sites, but community-focused websites?
Again, anything off device. It doesn't matter what site it is. The most highly trafficked sites translates to virtually no impact on your placement in the store. If you find a few hundred installs valuable, great, but it really isn't going to impact your placement in the store. You need to be at bare minimum in the top 100, whether it's category or overall. If you're not in the top 100, you might as well not be on the App Store. Wow. Most installs are initiated by search. About 63% of all installs are done by simple search on the App Stores. So the importance of App Store optimization is enormous, and I'm going to get to store language. Yes?
And what about some, I would call it co-marketing or something like that? That means if your app is featured among the similar apps to one that is really in the top, how does it?
Well, that's cross promotion.
Okay.
So the more eyeballs you get on device translates to more installs. Whether you're buying them, whether you're getting organically, virally. Now again, the most valuable user is going to be an organic install. You can buy your way through the lift, the organic net, seeing 3 to 10x the amount of money that you're spending on return. No, I'm sorry, not on the amount of money, but on the number of users. So if you buy 100 users, you could see 300 to 1,000.
Because lately there is also a feature on Google Play that it writes that maybe you should like to, or maybe you would like to install this game because 90 or many people who played the other game that you have already installed do play this one.
Yeah. So there's Apple has Game Center, Google Play is coming out with some new features, but anything that's on the device that people can see is going to translate to installs. Anything off device, that's just the whole point of this. And then secondly, that search is hugely impactful.
sorry to push this, but like I find like channels like Touch Arcade for me extremely influential, and I'm a very like discriminating like app downloader.
Yeah.
And I was thinking like if my app gets a video review on Touch Arcade, like that has to be like at least a few thousand installs, right?
Yeah. Well, the best you could net from some of those might be a few thousand, but again, you need 80,000 to get to the top 10. So is it going to impact your placement in the store? Very, very unlikely, if at all. Yeah.
I'm curious where you get the number of searches 63% of downloads. My feeling is, certainly for games, that's not true. I think for games, a lot more of it is just the charts.
Well, this comes from, I think, aptly. There's a couple of, yeah, Ian?
Actually, Google did announce 63%, and that was for all apps. So I think
I've got some, at the end, I've got some tools of the trade that you can use to find all this data, so I'll go over that in the end.
I'd be willing to bet that it's different for games, that search is less so for games. That's just...
Well, right now, 80% of all downloads are games, so if they're saying 63% of all app installs come from searches, it's probably very close for games. It might be bumped a little bit lower, but not that much.
Maybe that's